something really fun and happy. And you know who's fun and happy? I swear to God, I love, is Marc Bolan. Do you have any recollections of Marc Bolan at all?
Oh, he was a lovely guy. He came to the All Things Must Pass sessions a couple times. He was all dressed up. Now, we all had great clothes, and it came from like Deborah and Claire for shirts, and Granny Takes a Trip. I forgot to mention that the other day. But yeah, Gene and Marty had Granny Takes a Trip. Everybody, like Ronnie Wood, everybody got their clothes. Rod Stewart, everybody got Granny Takes a Trip.
Was that down on Carnaby Street or?
It was on Kings Road.
Oh, on Kings Road, yeah.
Yeah, and that was great. I mean, I got all my clothes there. They would make you whatever you wanted. I used to have a jacket that had a big peacock on the back and hummingbirds on it. And they had it put together for me.
So, Marc Bolan, do you have any?
No, just that he was a lovely guy and showed up at the All Things Must Pass sessions. And he was all silked out,
Of course.
As was Peter Frampton. He came in and...
I think silk was in the day.
He was looking good too. He had his silk pants on.
What about Paul Kossoff? Didn't you know Paul Kossoff a bit?
Yeah, they went on tour with us when it was Delaney
Free.
and Bonnie and
Wasn't
Friends.
that free
they
at
were
the
free.
time?
Yeah. And he and I hit it off real well, and we swapped some guitars. I gave him an acoustic I had, and he gave me a little Gibson, a little red Gibson that had one pickup on it. And I carried that thing around for years. And then went to my mama's house in Millington, Tennessee. It was many, many, many years later, in the mid-'70s. And I went out to do something and came back. I think it would be the late 70s, because Bo was born. My son Bo, guitar was standing up against the wall at my mom's house. He knocked it over, boom, headstock popped. Well, I'm gone and doing something. I came back and I was looking for my guitar. She said, "Oh, I threw that thing in the trash."
Oh God, you know.
And I said, "Really?" She said, "Yeah, Bo knocked it over, broke the top of it," and she said it wasn't no good. And so it was too late. That was like 2 days. I was out messing around doing something. It was a couple of days later. But yeah, there was a Paul Kossoff guitar in my keep.
Don't you know we're all going, oh,
he looked like a lion when he played. He was awesome. What a great player he was. Took too many mandrakes,
What about any other guys on the scene at that time? Do you remember Roy Gallagher and people like that? Did you?
No, but I can tell you, Roy Gallagher, I got a call. I did a show in Dublin with my friend Philip Donnelly, R.I.P. him. He passed away just recently, but he called me to do a show, and I went over to do it. And I was living in Wargrave in England, and this was in the '80s. And I got back to Wargrave after doing the show for RTE1 called Sessions, and a very big deal. They had a run of them. They went on for, I guess, a dozen shows, and Donnelly was the musical director. Well, I came back from after doing my little thing that afternoon. I came back home to Wargrave, and I hadn't walked through the door good, and the phone rang. And it was the guys, David and Gerald Heffernan, the producers of the series. They said, "Would you like to turn around and come back here while we're still doing this? Roy Gallagher fella hurt his back, and we need something, need you badly." And I said, "Yeah." And so I turned right around and went back to Dublin and did a thing. I never met Roy Gallagher, but I sent out thank you very, very much for, and I'm happy to hear about your back.
That's the show you brought Steve Cropper over to.
I did. I brought Steve Cropper over to be a part of it, and John Parr.
Well, why Steve? Why did you choose Steve Cropper? Is it because they love that music over there? Or
No, it was because he got me out of the United States. Somebody I want to guest. I can have. They told me I can have any guest I want.
That's awesome.
And so Steve Cropper was the first person that came to my mind, and I called him, and he said, "Yeah." I said, "Great." And so I rented a castle, Barberstown Castle, for a month, Everybody stayed at Barberstown Castle. I stayed on after the show stuff was done. But yeah, it was great fun. It was great fun. And John Parr, I've known, met him as a songwriter.
Right.
He had a huge hit on a song called "Man in Motion," and John could really sing. And so I had him over as a guest artist on my show.
The show went down very well.
Oh yeah. They still air those things.
Steve Cropper has got a huge following, I would imagine, and
Oh yeah.
I know.
I'll tell you, if it hadn't been for Steve Cropper, we wouldn't be sitting here talking about Derek and the Dominoes or any of that, or All Things Must Pass or anything. Because when I left Delaney and Bonnie, I didn't know what to do, and I was living across the street, one door down from Delaney and Bonnie, and I had to put myself in the wind, and I didn't know what to do. And Steve Cropper, I called him and I said, I got to get out of here. I said, I terminated myself with Delaney and Bonnie. I said, I got to do something. And I knew I wasn't going to go back to Memphis, and I didn't want to stay in L.A. I didn't know what to do. He said, why don't you call Eric? And I may have told this story, but I'll tell it again. I said, well, what about? And he said, why don't you just call him and say that you left Delaney and Bonnie, you'd like to just come over and hang out for a few days. And I told him, I said, I don't have any money. And he said, don't worry about that. Just call him and see what he says. Call me back. And that was a Wednesday. I called Eric, and he picked up the phone. That's the only 2 times I've ever known him to pick the phone up, was when I called and when George Harrison called. And he picked up. I said, hey, man, this is Bobby. I said, I've just left Delaney and Bonnie. I said, I'd like to come over and hang out a little bit, kind of clear my head. And he said, come on over. I called Crop back as soon as I hung up with Eric, and Crop said, well, I'll have you a ticket there tomorrow. And sure enough, knock, 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 next day I had an airplane ticket. That was a Thursday. Friday I packed my bags, and I was in England on Saturday.
Right. And we covered that. And that was the beginning of everything for you, really.
Yeah, so, and if it hadn't been for Steve Cropper making that suggestion,
right,
Derek and the Dominoes and Layla album, that would have never happened, because none of that would have happened without me. Right. My input on George Harrison's All Things Must Pass album and Living in a Material World, which is mostly spillover stuff that we recorded during the All Things Must Pass, that wouldn't have existed, and it would have made a big dent in everything.
It would never have been.
It would have never happened.
So
certainly the way that it happened, and Derek and the Dominoes would not have happened at all. None of those songs would have happened had it not been for me and Eric writing them.
So that was your gift to Steve, was to bring him back over there and
something like that.
Spent quite a while there. Didn't he think that you had rigged the system so that wherever you went, you were hearing?
Oh
this?
Yeah, well, yeah. He wanted to go shopping. He came over after doing the thing. He wanted to go to London to go shopping, so he got a hotel. And I had a limo pick us up and drive us around, and and we went to Harrods and walked into a shop, and Hold On, I'm Coming, so playing over the air. And he said, wow, that's coincidental. And then we went somewhere else to another shop, and Midnight Hour came on, Wilson Pickett. And he went, wow. And so we went somewhere else, and something else came on. And he said, you had this all set up. You called in advance. I said, no, man, this is awesome.
That's funny.
Yeah. Everywhere we went, one of his songs came on. One time I was on the elevator at an attorney's office in Memphis, and times were hard for me then. And they say you made it when you get on the elevator and you hear your song on Muzak. I got on this thing that was full of a bunch of suits, and they were all standing there. Thorn Tree in the Garden came over on the elevator. I didn't have a dime in my pocket, and I wanted to say, that's me! I didn't, though.